But he was around for a while under a number of different names, and this is because you had different people calling the same entity by the same name, or also because after the Tower of Babel incident, where the languages were split, you had different people calling the same entity by a different name. He first shows up in history as the god of the Amorites. The Amorites, you see their names a lot up to the time of the conquest. He was called Amuru by the Amorites. Amuru, also called Martu by the Sumerians. He was a storm god who became part of the Sumerian pantheon when the Amorites moved in from the western part of Mesopotamia and took over and established the kingdom of Babylon. There was a period there, like during the time from Abraham to the time of the Judges, where these Amorites basically controlled all of the Fertile Crescent. But they had their own gods. These Amorites came in, they brought their god Amuru. Well, he's a storm god. Sumer, where Babylon was located, is basically a desert. It doesn't storm there. Didn't demonstrate much power. So Amuru never really caught on. But it was kind of interesting. They thought, like the Amorites, the Sumerians thought that Amuru, this god, was uncouth, uncivilized, kind of a savage. He lived in a tent. He ate raw meat. It's ew. But like Baal, later on, he was called the Thunderer and the Hurler of the Thunderbolt. He also was referred to by this name, Bel Shaddai. Bel Shaddai, which means God of the mountain. This is very similar to El Shaddai, which is how God introduced himself to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And because of this, scholars, this is, I mean, you gotta give the enemy credit. Smart. They sell a lie to the people in ancient Mesopotamia. Oh, this is God of the mountain, Bel Shaddai. And today, the 21st century, scholars read this and say, yeah, the ancient Israelites just copied their gods from Mesopotamia. Very smart. After Amuru came Ishkur. Ishkur was another god similar to Adad, still kind of a second-rate god, one of the junior gods of he wouldn't have been a member of the Justice League if this were like DC Comics. You know, he would have been like one of the second-tier guys. In an area where it almost never rains, having a storm god is really not much use. But as the Amorite kingdoms got weakened around 1600, 1500 BC, this is about the time where the Israelites were getting ready to leave Egypt, the Amorites got pushed back out of what is now Iraq, back into Syria, and back toward the Holy Land, back toward Canaan. And Ishkur, Amuru, became known as Adad, which then became Hadad, the god of the Canaanites, god of the Amorites, and this is the god that we know from the Bible, Hadad. He was the storm god of the northwestern Semitic people. These would be the occupants of the Levant, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Canaan. He was the king of the Canaanite pantheon, defeated the storm god, or the chaos god of the sea, Yam. He governed rain, and because of that, he was the one who made crops grow. So very important, especially in an area where it doesn't rain all that often. This is an important god. Again, just as the Israelites would say Hashem, because saying the name, which is what Hashem means, saying the name was preferable to actually trying to say the name of God, or they would say Adonai, Lord. Hadad became known as Baal. At some point, it stopped being a title and became his name. Now, the absence, and this is what he looked like, by the way, in most of his representations, usually depicted as a bearded god in a smiting pose. You see this in a lot of ancient gods. They like to be shown smiting. A mace in one hand, thunderbolts in the other. That is how Adad was represented by the Canaanites. His holy mountain, as I said, Mount Zaphon, which is that mountain on the border between Syria and Turkey, right on the Mediterranean. His impact, the impact of Baal, was so important in Israelite history that the mountain, Baal's mountain, Mount Zaphon, became the Hebrew word for the compass point north. Every time you said north, you were saying the name of Baal's holy mountain. He is also identified with these gods. Baal became known to all of the ancient world, at least around the Mediterranean. To the Hurrians, not to be confused with the Russians, just a little archaeological joke there. The Hurrians, they were a people that lived in what is now southern Turkey. They called them Teshub. The Hittites, who lived further north in Turkey, they called them Tarhun. To the Hyksos, when they were in Egypt, he was Set. You might know him from your high school mythology class as Zeus. Zeus was Baal. Jupiter was Baal. And as we get more into the AD period, 1st and 2nd century AD, and the Germanic tribes came into contact with the Roman Empire and the Greeks, he became known as Thor. All the same God.